Poor girl's dad cut her off for refusing to obey her stepmom. Then at her sister's wedding, he called her a disgrace publicly, so she made them regret all.
The wedding music stopped all at once. Everyone got quiet. Adana stood in the middle of the big wedding tent, not moving. Her heart beat fast like a drum. All around her, people stared with wide eyes and open mouths. Some guests whispered behind their hands. Others looked down at their feet, too uncomfortable to watch. "You are a disgrace to this family," her father, Obiora, shouted, his finger pointed right at her face. His eyes were angry, like fire. "How dare you show your face here today?" Adana felt her cheeks burn hot with shame. Her pretty blue dress now felt too tight. The air felt too thick to breathe. She wanted to run away and hide, but her feet wouldn't move. "But Baba, I was invited," she said, her voice shaking. She held up the small paper invitation with shaking hands. "Kofi's family wanted me to come." "Liar!" yelled Fumilayo, her stepmother, pushing through the crowd. Her colorful head wrap was tilted to one side from rushing over. "No one would invite a troublemaker like you. You came to ruin Zainab's special day." Zainab, the bride, stood frozen next to her new husband. Her wedding gown sparkled in the sunlight, but her face looked scared and confused. "Is this true?" asked one of the village elders, looking at Kofi's family. "Did you invite this girl without telling her own father?" Before anyone could answer, Obiora stepped closer to Adana. His voice got louder. 10 years ago, this ungrateful child left our home. She chose strangers over her own family. Now she returns to shame us." Tears rolled down Adana's face, but she didn't wipe them away. She stood straight and tall, even though her heart was breaking again. "That's not what happened, Baba," she said softly. "You know that's not true." "Quiet," Fumilayo snapped. "Your father is speaking." The wedding guests moved back, making a big circle around them. This family fight was now the main event at what should have been a happy celebration. Kofi, the groom, finally stepped forward. He looked uncomfortable but spoke firmly. "There must be some mistake. My mother sent invitations to—" "There is no mistake," Obiora cut him off. "This girl brings bad luck wherever she goes. First she disobeyed her mother." "I never disobeyed my mother," Adana said, her voice getting stronger. "My real mother taught me to be honest and kind. I have tried to live by her words every day since she died." Some of the older village women nodded. They remembered Nkechi, Adana's mother, and her gentle ways. "How dare you talk back to me?" Obiora's face turned dark with anger. "See how she behaves? This is why I sent her away. No respect. A true disgrace." The crowd gasped again. Even people who didn't know the whole story could see something was very wrong here. Fumilayo stepped forward quickly. "This girl is crazy from living alone too long. Someone take her away before she ruins everything." Many years ago, in a small village near the big river Niger, little Adana lived in a mud house with her parents. The house wasn't fancy, but it was always clean and filled with good smells from cooking. Adana was a happy child with bright eyes and quick feet. Every morning she would run outside to feel the warm sun on her face. Her laugh was so happy that even grumpy old people in the village would smile when they heard it. "Adana, come help me with these yams," her mother Nkechi called one sunny morning. Adana ran inside right away, her bare feet making little pat-pat sounds on the dirt floor. "Coming, Mama." Nkechi sat on a small wooden stool with a pile of fat yams next to her. She handed a small knife to Adana and patted the ground beside her. "Sit here, my little bird," Nkechi said with a smile. Her hands were strong but gentle from years of hard work. "Today I will teach you how to pick the best yams and how to cut them properly." Adana sat down and watched carefully as her mother showed her how to peel the brown skin off the yams. "Not too deep," Nkechi explained. "We don't want to waste any food." As they worked, sunlight came through the small window and made bright patches on the floor. Outside, chickens clucked and scratched in the dirt. "Your father will be home soon with fish," Nkechi said. "He works so hard for us." "Will Papa tell me a story tonight?" Adana asked hopefully. She loved her father's stories about river spirits and clever animals. "If you help me make his favorite soup, I'm sure he will," Nkechi laughed. Later that day, when the yams were cooking in a big pot, Nkechi pulled Adana close and stroked her hair. "Listen to me, my child," she said in a serious voice. "Life is not always easy. Sometimes it will be very hard, but always remember to be honest and kind, even when others are not. Can you promise me that?" Adana nodded. "I promise, Mama." "Good girl," Nkechi smiled. "One day you will grow into a strong woman. Being strong doesn't mean being loud or mean. Real strength is in here." She touched Adana's chest right over her heart. When Obiora came home that evening, he brought 3 big fish and a small wooden bird he had carved for Adana. "Papa, look what Mama taught me today," Adana said, showing him the yams she had peeled. Obiora picked her up and spun her around. "My clever daughter, soon you will be cooking better than your mother." "No one cooks better than Mama," Adana giggled. That night, after eating fish stew with yams, they sat outside under the stars. Neighbors came by to chat, and children played games in the open space between houses. "Papa, tell the story about the tortoise and the birds," Adana begged, climbing onto her father's lap. "Again? I told that one last week." Obiora pretended to be tired, but his eyes twinkled. "Please, Papa." "It's my favorite." "Mine too," said Nkechi, sitting down beside them. She rested her head on Obiora's shoulder, and he put his arm around her. Obiora cleared his throat and began in his deep storytelling voice. "Once upon a time when animals could talk, just like people." Adana snuggled against her father's chest, feeling safe and loved. The night air was cool, and the stars looked like tiny holes in the sky blanket. She didn't know yet that happy times can end suddenly, like a candle blown out by the wind. "Look at them," an old woman whispered to her friend as they walked past. "Such a beautiful family. Nkechi is blessed with a good husband and a sweet child." "Yes," her friend agreed, "and that little girl has her mother's kind spirit. You can see it in her eyes." For these few precious years, Adana's life was simple, but good. She helped her mother cook and clean. She learned to weave baskets from palm leaves. She played with other children and listened to her father's stories. Every night before sleep, Nkechi would sing a special song just for Adana. "Little bird with gentle wings, fly high and see amazing things, but always come back home to me, where love is waiting, strong and free." Adana didn't know that soon she would need to remember this song to help her through the darkest days of her life. She didn't know that the mother who sang it would soon be gone forever. For now, in this moment, she was just a happy little girl who fell asleep each night with a full belly and a peaceful heart, not knowing how quickly everything can change. One hot season day, Adana came back from collecting water at the river and found Nkechi lying on her sleeping mat in the middle of the day. This was strange because her mother never rested during daylight hours. "Mama, are you okay?" Adana asked, putting down the heavy water pot. Nkechi's eyes looked glassy, and her skin felt hot like fire when Adana touched her forehead. "Just tired, my little bird," Nkechi said, but her voice came out weak and scratchy. "I need to rest for a while." But Nkechi didn't get better after resting. By nightfall, she was shaking with fever, and her breathing came fast and shallow. Obiora ran to get Mama Chica, the old woman who knew about healing plants. She came quickly, her walking stick tapping on the hard ground as Obiora led her to their hut. "How long has she been like this?" Mama Chica asked, bending down to look at Nkechi. "Since this morning," Adana said, twisting her hands together with worry. "She couldn't even drink the soup I made." Mama Chica opened her medicine bag and took out leaves and roots. She crushed them between stones and mixed them with water. "Help me lift her head," she told Adana. Together they raised Nkechi's head and tried to make her drink the medicine. "Will she get better now?" Adana asked, hope making her voice higher than normal. Mama Chica didn't answer right away. Instead, she put her hand on Adana's shoulder and squeezed gently. For 3 days and 3 nights, Adana stayed by her mother's side. She put wet cloths on Nkechi's hot forehead. She sang the little bird song over and over. She held her mother's hand and talked about what they would do when she got better. Other women from the village came to help. They brought food and prayers. Some sat with Adana so she could sleep a little. On the fourth morning, Nkechi opened her eyes and looked clearly at Adana for the first time since getting sick. "My beautiful girl," she whispered, lifting her weak hand to touch Adana's cheek. "Remember what I taught you." "I will, Mama," Adana promised, tears falling onto her mother's hand. "But you need to get better and teach me more things." Nkechi smiled, but her eyes looked sad. "Be strong, my little bird. Your wings are small now, but they will grow powerful." Those were her last words. As the sun reached the middle of the sky, Nkechi took one last breath, and then was still forever. "Mama! Mama!" Adana shook her mother's shoulder. "Wake up, Mama! Please wake up!" Obiora, who had been sitting outside the hut, rushed in when he heard Adana crying. He looked at his wife's face and fell to his knees beside the mat. "No, Nkechi, no," he moaned, gathering her lifeless body into his arms. His tears fell onto her face, but she couldn't feel them anymore. The funeral happened the next day. The whole village came. Men dug a grave under the big baobab tree where Nkechi had liked to sit in the shade. Women wrapped her body in white cloth and placed her favorite wooden comb and bracelet beside her. Adana stood next to her father, feeling empty inside. She was only 10 years old, but childhood seemed suddenly far away, like a dream she had once had. "What will happen now, Papa?" she asked that night as they sat in their too-quiet hut. Obiora stared into the cooking fire, his eyes far away. "I don't know," he said finally. "I don't know how to live without her." In the days that followed, their home changed. The cooking pots stayed dirty. The floor wasn't swept. Obiora left early each morning to fish and came back late, sometimes smelling of palm wine. Adana tried her best to keep things clean and cook food like her mother had taught her. But she was young and didn't know everything yet. Sometimes the fish stew was too salty. Sometimes the yams weren't cooked all the way through. "I'm sorry, Papa," she would say when the food wasn't good. "I'm trying to remember how Mama did it." Obiora would just push the food around his plate and then leave the hut again. Sometimes he would stay away until Adana was already asleep. At night, Adana would wrap herself in her mother's old cloth that still smelled faintly of the oils Nkechi used on her skin. In the darkness, she would sing the little bird song to herself and pretend her mother was still there, listening. "I miss you, Mama," she would whisper into the empty darkness. "I'm trying to be strong, but it's hard." The only answer was the night sounds, crickets chirping and sometimes an owl calling from the baobab tree where her mother now slept forever. 2 rainy seasons passed this way. Adana grew taller and learned to cook better. She kept the hut clean and even planted a small garden with vegetables like her mother used to grow. The women in the village would sometimes stop by to check on her and show her things a growing girl should know. But the sadness in the little mud house never really went away. Obiora smiled less and less. His eyes stayed dark with grief, and the lines in his face got deeper. He spoke little, and when he did, his voice sounded tired. Adana missed the father who had once spun her around and told wonderful stories. She missed her mother even more, but she kept her promise to be strong, even when her heart felt like a heavy stone in her chest. She didn't know then that more changes were coming, changes that would test that promise in ways she couldn't imagine. One evening, as Adana was cooking dinner, she heard voices outside. One was her father's, but the other was a woman's voice she didn't know. It was loud and full of laughter. "Adana, come out here," Obiora called. Adana wiped her hands on her old wrapper and stepped outside. The setting sun made everything look orange and gold. Standing next to her father was a tall woman wearing bright clothes with many patterns. She had gold earrings and thick bracelets that jingled when she moved her arms. "This is Fumilayo," Obiora said. His face looked happier than Adana had seen in a long time. "She is going to be your new mother." Adana's heart jumped in her chest. New mother. No one could replace her mama. But she remembered her promise to be kind, so she bowed politely. "Welcome to our home," she said quietly. Fumilayo smiled widely, showing a small gap between her front teeth. "What a respectful child," she said, patting Adana's head. "We will get along well, my daughter." But something in the woman's eyes didn't match her smile. They looked cold, like the river water in the rainy season. "Is something cooking?" Fumilayo asked, sniffing the air. "I'm hungry after our journey." "Yes, I made fish stew," Adana said, "but there's only enough for 2 people. I didn't know we would have a guest." Fumilayo's smile got smaller. "Well, I am not a guest. This is my home now. You will need to learn to cook more food." "Yes, Fumilayo," Adana said, lowering her eyes. "Not Fumilayo," the woman corrected sharply. "You will call me Mother." Adana's throat felt tight. The word mother belonged to Inkichi. It felt wrong to give it to someone else, but she nodded anyway. Later that night, after they had shared the small pot of stew, Adana lay on her sleeping mat and listened to her father and Fumilayo talking outside. "The girl needs a woman's guidance," Fumilayo was saying. "She is growing up wild, like a bush animal. Look at her clothes, and her hair isn't properly braided." "She has done her best," Obiora defended. "She is only 12. "Well, now she has me," Fumilayo said. "I will teach her how a proper young woman should behave." The next few days were full of changes. Fumilayo moved all of Adana's things to a small corner of the hut. She hung new cloths on the walls and put her cooking pots where Inkichi's had once been. When Obiora was home, Fumilayo was sweet to Adana. She would call her "my child" and tell her she was pretty. But as soon as Obiora left for fishing, everything changed. "Girl, these mats are dirty. Wash them again," Fumilayo would shout. "But I just washed them yesterday," Adana would say. "Are you talking back to me?" Fumilayo's eyes would narrow dangerously. "Your father told me you were disobedient. I see he was right." Adana would duck her head and do as she was told, even when the work had already been done. She didn't want to cause trouble. She wanted her father to stay happy. One morning, Adana was sweeping the yard when Fumilayo called her inside. "Look," Fumilayo said, pointing to her flat belly. "Soon you will have a little brother or sister. Your father is very happy." Adana didn't know what to say. Part of her was excited about a baby, but another part worried about what this meant for her. "That's good news," she finally said. "Yes, it is," Fumilayo agreed. "Now I need you to go collect twice as much water from the river. I need to keep clean for the baby." As her belly grew bigger, Fumilayo made Adana work harder. She had to fetch more water, pound more yams, and clean more than ever before. If she was slow or made a mistake, Fumilayo would complain to Obiora. "Your daughter is lazy," she would say when he came home. "She watches me struggle with my big belly and does nothing to help." "Is this true, Adana?" Obiora would ask, his face serious. "No, Papa. I worked all day on—" "She lies, too," Fumilayo would cut in. "Just like I told you." Obiora would sigh and tell Adana to be better. "Your new mother needs your help now. Don't disappoint me." One hot afternoon, while Obiora was away on a 2-day fishing trip, Fumilayo started screaming. "The baby is coming. Get Mama Chica. Hurry, stupid girl." Adana ran as fast as she could to Mama Chica's hut. The old healer gathered her birthing tools and hurried back with Adana. For many hours, Fumilayo screamed and pushed. Adana boiled water and tore clean cloths as Mama Chica directed. Finally, as the moon rose high in the sky, a baby's cry filled the hut. "A girl," Mama Chica announced, cleaning the tiny red baby with warm water. "Strong and healthy." When Obiora returned the next day, he was overjoyed. He held the baby girl carefully, like she was made of thin glass that might break. "We will name her Zainab," he said proudly. "It means beautiful one." Fumilayo smiled up at him from her sleeping mat. "Yes, a perfect name for our perfect daughter." Adana stood in the corner, watching. No one had noticed the fresh cuts on her arms from where she had caught herself in the thorn bushes running to get Mama Chica. No one had thanked her for staying awake all night, keeping the fire going and bringing water when needed. She looked at baby Zainab's tiny face and felt her heart soften. It wasn't the baby's fault that things were this way. Maybe having a little sister would make things better. But she was wrong. As Zainab grew, Fumilayo's treatment of Adana got worse, not better. All the good food went to Zainab. All the pretty clothes, all the gentle words, all the love was for the baby. Wash these clothes again. They still look dirty, Fumilayo would say, throwing Zainab's tiny dresses at Adana's feet. But I've washed them 3 times already, Adana would protest. Do you want your sister to get sick from dirty clothes? What kind of big sister are you? When Obiora brought home a small wooden toy or a sweet treat from the market, it always went to Zainab, even though Adana had received nothing for many moons. Papa, could I have one too? She asked once when he brought home sweet fried dough. Fumilayo jumped in before Obiora could answer. So greedy. At your age, you should be thinking of others, not yourself. Obiora frowned at Adana. Your mother is right. Zainab is small. She needs these things more than you. Adana's heart hurt, but she nodded and went back to her chores. At night, she would sometimes whisper to her real mother's spirit, Mama, I'm trying to be good. I'm trying to be kind. But it's getting harder every day. The wind would rustle through the thatch roof, almost like an answer. Almost like her mother was saying, Stay strong, my little bird. Your wings are growing. Years passed and Adana grew taller. She was 16 now, with slim arms strong from carrying water and pounding yams. Her little sister Zainab was 6, a round-faced child who followed their father around like a shadow.